Hi, I'm John Slattery and you're very welcome along to Carfile. Each week in the programme we test 3 different makes of cars from a particular group to see which one of them comes out on top in the 5 Carfile categories: interior, exterior styling, performance, practicality and value for money. And this week it's estates, but forget about your Undertaker and your antiques dealer because these are all high performance variants. With a combined total of 685 brake horsepower, these are aimed at those of you who need the carrying space but appreciate the faster things in life.
From Volvo we have their V70 T5, the traffic cop's favourite. This car will get you to 60 in around 7 seconds, yet keep you safer than a turkey at a vegan convention. From MG we have the ZTT. This model has the latest engine, the 1.8 turbo. Though not the quickest car here, its looks certainly make it stand out from the estate car crowd. And in the VW camp we have the Passat W8. Unlike the MG, this looks like any other family estate car on the road, yet under the bonnet is an engine a supercar would be proud of, a huge 4-litre W8.
And as well as our main cars, Brendan Coogan will be here with a report on our alternative estate.
That's right, whilst I've been stuck in Mercedes' Manchester showroom, our lucky camera buds have been jetting off to Marseille to show you pictures of the latest Mercedes E-Class. Facts and figures of that coming up later in the show.
So the first category we're going to take a look at is exterior styling. Now a couple of years ago the words exterior styling wouldn't have been used in association with estates. Well, certainly not Volvo anyway, they simply didn't have any. But nowadays curve is most definitely the word, and there's no doubting that this V70 is a very stylish machine. It's a big car with a wide stance, and the T5 version certainly has a look of high performance about it. Side on, the V70 is extremely long, helped by these hard door lines. But surprise, surprise, it's not as long as the last V70. Mind you, I don't think we're getting into smart car territory just yet. And around the back, well, this is a bit of a bone of contention with me, the lights. I know they have to be big for safety reasons, but come on. You could stick them on the back of a cruise liner, for God's sake, going across the Atlantic, or even strap them to the bottom of a 747. So overall, the Swedes have done an excellent job in making a big spacious car look quite attractive. It's not cutting edge, but it's no shoebox either. And the high-spec T5 has just enough sporting touches to make it stand out. So, from the sensible grown-up styling of the Volvo to the estate that the boy racer would choose, it's the boldly kitted MG ZTT.
Well, there's no blending into the traffic with one of these cars. Designed to give MG Rover a more sporty image, the Z cars shout performance at you, even if they may not deliver as much as the looks suggest. It certainly will put traditional Volvo buyers off with its enormous front grille and air intake and those twin headlamps and fog lamps. MG continues the sports theme with the large alloys, sleek mirrors, and the whole length of the car has a side skirt fitted. And so to our third car, the VW Passat W8. Well, what can you say about it? Yes, it's stylish, and yes, it's as solid as they come, but compared to our other 2 estates, it's hardly jaw-dropping. If I drive a car with a 4-litre 8-cylinder engine, 275 horsepower and 4-wheel drive, I want people to know about it. So okay, looking like a run-of-the-mill Passat is no bad thing. It is one of the more attractive cars on the road, but you can't help thinking that with a power plant that's so special, why not make the car look a bit more worthy of such a great engine? Overall then, we have to mark the MG the most. I'm sure that will please half of you and make the other half throw things at the TV. But for an aggressive performance look, they've come up trumps. Yes, the Volvo is stylish and more enticing in the looks department than the VW, but it's still a bit too safe and sensible for a real sporting machine.
Now, when you're designing the interior of an estate, it's vital that you get a good result. By their very nature, they spend most of their life out on long motorway journeys. And the last thing you want when you're stuck on the M1 is to be in a car with a dull and badly finished interior. Now, outside, the Passat did not inspire, but inside it's absolutely superb. The W8 comes with leather seats as standard, which instantly makes the car feel expensive. But it's the attention to detail which is absolutely superb. Every lever, handle and knob oozes quality, and there's a feeling that it will last a lifetime. And the level of kit that comes as standard is also very impressive. CD player, climate control, metallic paint, everything electric. And safety wise, you get a full set of airbags. Now, as you would expect in the VW, the seating position is extremely comfortable and the steering wheel moves up and down so it suits any height of driver. This is a top job from VW, and I'd nearly go so far as to say it's probably one of the best interiors that I've seen. So, how does the MG, which is 10 grand less than the VW, compare with its interior?
Well, the first thing you will notice is there's much less room in the MG, which you should expect as it's a smaller car. However, if anything, it does give you much more of a sports car feel, and the seats, though not leather, are much more supportive than the VW. The general cockpit layout is good, and the plastic effect wood and antique cream interior of the Rover 75 has been ditched in favour of black plastics and graphite effect inserts. Whilst it sounds naff, it actually works quite well and has a good quality feel to it. Equipment levels are also quite reasonable, with climate control, CD player, electric windows and mirrors coming as standard. And like the VW, there's a full set of airbags. And finally, it's the Volvo. Like the VW, Volvo have gone for comfort with the V70 and have some of the most comfortable seats I've sat in. In fact, ditch your sofa at home and sit in one of these. On this T5 model, the leather trim is standard, as is a cracking stereo system and climate control. The dash, though hardly the last word in style, is laid out extremely well, and unlike some cars, there's no fidgety switches or massive button. It's just clear, chunky and easy to use. As far as quality goes, it's not as good as the Passat. The Volvo is still excellent and very well put together and worthy of a £30,000 car. Overall then, we've rated the Passat's interior slightly higher than the Volvo because of the marginally better build quality. And whilst the MG's interior does feel the most sporty, it doesn't feel as high quality as the other two cars.
Now, on to the reasons as to why you would want to buy an estate car. Well, there's absolutely no point unless you lug an awful lot of gear around the place. So how do they cope? Well, our camera crew lug an awful lot of equipment around the place, and they normally drive a big Citroen Synergy. But if they were to downsize to an estate, which one of our three would come out on top? Well, this is where I earn my money, I'm told. Let's see how much gear we can fit into the MG. Before we start loading it, just show you in here, you've got the spare wheel, it's alloy, and there's a little hidey space in there that you can put gear, and it's also got luggage hooks on both sides. So, how much of this are we going to get in? Planning, I think, is everything. Now, because of the two suspension towers, it's quite narrow in the back, so I think I would throw that in first. Then, we'll try this for size, up the back, as so. Comes in quite narrow at the sides as well. Another thing you watch out for is you might scrape the bumper quite easily because of the loading in and out of gear, which isn't probably a great idea. I don't think I'm going to get that in, so we'll go for one of these in like so. Yes, that works. Straighten it up in a minute. Try and squeeze this one out the other side. I don't think somehow I'm going to get the big box in as well, and this, I suppose, is the last thing. Now, being the smallest of the three estates, I have to say that's not bad at all. And another little touch that MG has that I really like is this. It's a little window hatch. Well, after all that, I think it's about time the camera crew did a work for a change.
Straight away you can see that the Passat has a bigger boot, and it's also got a low loading area, which is great for heavy items. Now, unlike the MG, the Passat doesn't have any usable storage under the boot floor, as it's taken up entirely by the spare wheel. With a little fiddling, the crew managed to get all of their boxes into the back, and even the long tripod case went in with ease. On the whole, pretty impressive. Onto the Volvo, and initially there didn't seem to be that much more space than in the Passat, but looks can be deceiving. First off, there is a storage area under the floor, and though it's not as large as that in the MG, it is still a useful space. But the boot itself just swallowed up box after box. It's a completely flat floor, and despite the sloping sides, there's an impressive amount of vertical room. In fact, the crew managed to get every box into the car with room for a few more. Obviously, all our cars have split fold seats, but for today's test, we are just concentrating on the boot area itself. For what is a small estate, the MG was surprisingly impressive when swallowing up our flight cases. And we like the underfloor storage area. The Passat also took an impressive amount of equipment, and the area is well designed. Overall, if you have a large amount of kit to move around, the Volvo offers the most space. Quite simply, it's awesome.
so far, all of our cars have had something to write home about, and later on in the programme we'll be seeing how they perform out on the road. But right now it's time to go over to Brendan Coogan, who's got a report on the latest E-Class Mercedes.
Mercedes' old E-Class estate was always considered a little dowdy. Sure, it was big, practical and built like Tony Blair's nuclear bunker, but it was more trimming hedge than cutting edge. Then came the all-new E-Class saloon with its sexy, curvaceous makeover, which left the estate looking, well, a little so last year. Now Mercedes have caught up and launched the all-new E-Class estate, and it's kept the old car's immense practicality, but does it with more style. One of the most important areas of an estate car's design is the shape of the rear end. Sloping is stylish but loses space. Square is more practical but means the car can end up looking like a hearse. The new E-Class is somewhere in between. To aid the already admirable practicality of the new car, you can get a host of neat little additions such as a collapsible storage basket stored under the boot floor, and if you opt for the Easy Pack option, you get rails set into the floor onto which can be fixed a range of accessories such as dog cages and cargo net. Inside it's identical to the saloon, which means you get plenty of space and a nice use of materials. Now there was a time some years ago when you had to pay extra for things like a stereo in Mercedes, but not anymore. As part of your standard kit you get self-leveling suspension, cruise control, climate control. Elegance and avant-garde models add auto-dipping rear view mirror, part leather seats and xenon headlights. There's a wide range of engines to choose from too, with 5 petrol engines ranging from a supercharged 1.8 litre to a fire-breathing 5.5 V8 on the AMG. Or you could choose one of the 3 turbo diesel engines. There's a 2.1, 2.7 and 3.2. Well, at least they've got all bases covered there then. Value for money has always been a contentious issue with cars like the Mercedes. Some see them as overpriced, others say you're paying for a quality item. Prices are going to range from about £27,000 up to about £50,000, so I'll let you make your mind up about whether it's worth it or not. One thing is for sure though, the last E-Class estate was and is a much sought after car, so residuals are strong, and there's no reason to suggest that this car will be any different. Mercedes have done a good job of bringing the E-Class up to date and losing some of its dowdy image without sacrificing practicality. And in E55 AMG form, I'm fairly sure it would wipe the floor with any of John's performance estates. And even in less potent form, the E-Class looks as if it will be the car to beat in the premium estate class.
And Brendan will be back next week with another showroom report. Well, that's it for part 1 of Carfile, but make sure you do join us after the break when we'll be road testing our 3 performance estate cars. See you in a minute. Hi and welcome back to Carfile, where this week we're testing performance estate cars. Now earlier on in the programme I told you the total combined horsepower of all 3 of our cars was a whopping 685, and the car responsible for the majority of that is the Passat, which produces 275 brake horsepower from its W8 engine. And no, I didn't say V8, this is a new engine from the VW stable. Basically, it's 2 VR6 engines mounted side by side onto the same output shaft. Then 4 of the cylinders are removed to give you the W8 configuration. Confused? Well, it's supposed to give you better refinement, better performance and better power compared to the conventional V8 engine. But to a young Irishman like me, or as some may say, an old Irishman like me, that is a cue for a test drive. This bit, I have to say, I like. Having 275 brake horsepower at the tip of my hoof is marvellous. But as in life, with every high, there has to be a low. The high stems from the fact the acceleration, oh yeah, is fantastic on this machine. The low is what happens after that, or should I say, what doesn't happen. How do I put this? This car has no zing. Plain and simple. It's supposed to be a performance estate, but after you enjoy the acceleration, that's pretty much the performance end of things wrapped up. Now don't get me wrong, it's extremely comfortable, and it is perfect for those long motorway drives with the family and of course all the luggage in the back. And being of German origin, it's well designed, it's extremely roomy, and it's wonderfully manufactured. You just have to look around to see the finishing touches in this machine. It is quite fantastic. And there's even places to put CDs. Can't beat that, can you?
It's powerful, it sounds great, but to be honest with you, I think I get a sportier feel if I put an engine in the bottom of my bed. I think my pulse has stopped. Let's hope that the Volvo can get it going again. Immediately you get behind the wheel of the V70, you can feel a difference over the Passat. It's firmer, more precise and more sporty. Now that's in part thanks to the new body of the car, which is much stiffer than the previous model V70, and it needs to be with the T5 engine. Although it's got 25 horsepower less than the Passat, at 250, it's more than enough to push you into your seat under acceleration, so any flaws in the chassis would soon show up. Now, for such a big, heavy car, the lack of body roll is impressive, and you can actually get quite flirty in the corners without coming unstuck. But just in case, like the Passat, the V70 comes with ABS and traction control as standard. On the T5 spec car, only front-wheel drive is available, and on some uneven road surfaces and loose covered corners, the car will spin its front-driven wheels quite easily. The answer, if the terrain you drive on demands it, is to go for one of the lesser powered four-wheel drive models which accelerate only slightly slower yet give you all the traction of a four-wheel drive vehicle. As a motorway cruiser, the V70 is superb with hardly any wind or road noise, and despite the chassis being much firmer than the Passat, it's nothing but comfortable. In fact, just ask any traffic cop. Well, one car that the police couldn't blend into the traffic with is the MG. Now, to compare this car with the other two in the power stakes would be unfair, as we've gone for the smallest engine in their lineup, the new 1.8 turbo. But though it is noticeably more sluggish compared to the Volvo and the Passat, it is still reasonably plucky, and give it plenty of revs and you will get acceptable performance. Having driven the V6 model earlier in the year, however, we'd say go for that engine every time, as it delivers the kind of performance the looks deserve. Power aside though, the ride of the MG is very impressive, and the engineers have found a great compromise in the comfortable ride of the Rover 75 and the firm ride of a sporting car. It remains composed on all but the choppiest of road surfaces, and the steering, which is quicker than its Rover counterpart, is weighted extremely well and gives good feedback. Lack of road noise on the 1.8 car is also quite impressive, but the smaller engine cars get smaller and narrower 16-inch wheels, so expect a little more tarmac rumble if you drive the ZTT kitted out with 18-inch wheels. The smaller size of the MG means that longer motorway runs won't be as comfortable as the other two cars, but that said, it's still a great all-round performer. It's no surprise then that the Volvo gets the highest marks in the performance stakes. It's very fast, very comfortable, yet its chassis copes admirably with the extra grunt of the T5 engine. It may be controversial, but the Passat and the MG get the same marks here. We like the Passat for its power and its comfort, but its cornering composure left a lot to be desired. And the MG, well, had it been the V6, we'd have scored it more than the Passat, but with a 1.8 engine, it's a little too underpowered for what is a fabulous chassis.
Well, the Passat provided the biggest surprise today. On paper, it looked like an awesome performance estate, but in reality, it was far from it. Powerful executive cruiser, yes. Exciting sporty drive, absolutely not. And the bad news is, if you still fancy one of these, well, it doesn't do too well in the value stakes either. You can pick one of these up for around 31 grand, whereas the V6 version will cost you 8 grand less. Fair enough, the W8 will get you to 60 1 second faster, and it's 11 miles per hour faster at the top end. Mind you, it is insurance group 17, and it loves to eat fuel. If it was mind-blowing performance, well, that would be a different story, but it's not. So it really does beg the question, why do you need one? I don't think you do. I think you should go for the V6 model and put that 8 grand in the bank, and then go off on a holiday in your brand new V6 with the 8 grand that you've saved. The ZTT is at the other end of the scale. It's the cheapest of our cars to buy, the cheapest to run, the cheapest to insure, yet the amount of kit you get is very impressive, and the body build shouldn't give you any problems over time. Yes, it will be worth a fraction of what the VW and the Volvo will be worth after 3 years, but for companies that are looking for short-term usage, this makes for a cracking buy. Now, as I said earlier, I do recommend you go for the 2.5 V6 because it's a better engine than the 1.8 turbo and it only costs £2,000 more. And now it's on to the Volvo. At just under 30 grand, it's slightly cheaper than the Passat, but it's a much more accomplished car and it feels it to drive. The level of kit you get is quite impressive. It's pretty much the same as the Passat. You get leather seats, climate control and CD player, and there's a host of safety features that come as standard. The other good news is that high-spec Volvos hold their value extremely well, which means this car will be worth the most of our 3 cars after 3 years. When it comes to fuel consumption, well, the figures are quoted at around 30 to the gallon, but to be honest, we have discovered that you'd want to be driving very calmly to return those sort of figures, and if you get excited with the old right leg at all, as you're bound to do in this car, well, those figures pretty quickly go out the window.
The Volvo gets our highest marks as it delivers the goods in every department: style, quality, performance and practicality, and for all under 30 grand. Next up is the MG. For just over 20 grand you get great handling, a sporty look and a reasonable practical estate car. And we suggest you pay the extra 2 grand and go for the V6 engine. And unfortunately the W8 Passat gets the lowest marks here, as paying an extra 8 grand for that engine just doesn't make sense for what you gain in performance.
Well, the policeman's favourite, the Volvo V70 T5, has won our vote as the most accomplished performance estate of the 3. Well, that's it for this week's Car File, but make sure you join me next week when we'll be testing 3 cars that all hold their money better than a Van Gogh: Honda's HR-V, the Mini Cooper and the BMW 3 Series Compact. We'll see you then.